Welcome to Mindful Monday live with Takia. My name is Takia Geddes, and I am a transformation facilitator, therapeutic kinetic specialist. I absolutely love helping heart centered seekers and leaders to free themselves of their past, create a life that they love. Transformation is one of those lifelong endeavors for many people. And unless we have a path that's intentional and that we attend to on a daily basis, many dreams go unfulfilled. And what a shame that is, to deprive the world of our genius. Today, we are going to be talking about naps. As I've shared many times on these these talks, we sometimes have to make choices, like caregiving or changing, locations, you know, geographically in the world, or bringing family into our home, kids of other family members. Sometimes I've seen, many times when families get disrupted, we have to make big decisions, and so these big decisions can often also bring with them previously unexperienced scenarios. And simply having change in our lives can be stressful, even though we know that change is really the constant in life, as life is always growing and expanding. So change is always happening. It's still not our default to accept change and go with the flow. We really do have a part of us that actually fights change tooth and nail. And it's very much a primitive response because homeostasis is safe. So the known will always be more readily accessible and experienced because we won't have much resistance to it, right? And so the path of least resistance will always be what we've done previously. So if we want something new, there has to be an intentional, aligned action and removal and release of the past in order to create something new. And so for some of you, naps might be this something new. So when you have a high stress job, let's say you work overnight shift, or you are on your feet a lot and you exert a lot of energy, let's say you do a lot of physical labor or a lot of really focused cognitive functioning where you have to analyze and crunch numbers or figure out, problem solve. It really, if you've ever taken a long drive, you know that it's not mindless, right? And what really gets tired first is actually our brains. And so there is actually a lot of study that has gone into finding out what actually makes us our most productive. And naps is one of the factors that can play a key role as a tool to help us navigate high stress situations. I wouldn't recommend using naps as a way of replacing good sleep patterns, but sometimes they're necessary as buffers when we're in situations or in a lifestyle that requires a lot of energy or in a time of transition and change. And so let's dive in. So it's my belief that we really generally need a better balance of rest and movement in general, right? Because a lot of times in our this kind of Western culture, especially here in the US, we have a very productivity driven mindset where we're expected to wake, and so taking rest or siesta is sometimes looked at as something that's for the lazy or for the other people, We laugh when we talk about cultures that take siestas, but there might be something to it, right? There might be something to age-old practices of taking rest midday. And and so let's just look at our own lives and make decisions based on what we need, right? You can take in all the information as I'll share with you tonight, and then decide what really works for you. Ultimately, that's what we always need to do: sift through the information and then let's settle into ourselves what works best for our situation in this moment in time. And so, as we're moving and we have our focus being pulled in different directions, we have obligations that we undertake when we're seeking to create a life that we love. Sleep sometimes can be thrown to the wayside. It might be the first habit to actually go, or a close second behind working out or moving intentionally. And so, do you see how both ends of the scale can actually get disrupted? Because if our rest and our movement is being disrupted, then what are we left with except the grind, right? And it is a grind because movement lubricates the grind and rest halts the grind. And so all we have left is the grind, right? If we don't do one or both of those things. And sometimes we can have this internal compulsion. We feel compelled to keep going. And it might come from, within, but the initial stimuli might have been external pressure that we then internalized. And so these are things for you to consider, just as you're navigating your own path. And we can really create fulfilling lives and create amazing, accomplishments when we have focused attention and really zoned in on things. And so, but we also have to have the other side, right? There has to be the yin to the yang. And we have natural body cycles that have to be respected, our circadian rhythm. And, we only actually, are awake after the sun goes down and many, many hours after, because electricity was invented. If that didn't happen, we'd be almost forced to slow down, right? It was, I don't know, they started with those firelit lamps, and then the rest is history. Now we're up, we have cities that never sleep, right? So, a nice remedy between that kind of bridges the gap between that kind of sleep and activity can be just rest. Rest is a nice segue, and sometimes that's all we need in order to continue on our path during the day, is a little rest, just a little rejuvenation. So we sometimes can feel like we need naps when we are also sleep deprived, or when we're having disrupted sleep. And so we want to also look at those things. Like if we're consistently needing naps, I mean, we're needing them, and we're not in a time of transition, and we're not in a time of necessarily, a lot of stress or some kind of new experience that we're having, and we're still needing these naps, like in a way that we can't survive without them. The way I hear a lot of people say, "Oh, I can't live without my coffee." That's a problem. That's a problem. If you can't live without something, then it's become, right, it's become a crutch. And so, you've given your power to that thing. Your survival is now being empowered by something outside of yourself. And these are the little ways that we kind of undercut our empowerment as these living, amazing, creative beings that we are. And we say these things kind of nonchalantly and unconsciously, but they, we give words meaning. Words are just symbols without our meaning that we attach. And so, what does what you're saying mean to you? And how are you perceiving yourself as you're moving through and acting out the words that you're saying? Really, really important. This is the alignment that, I've talked about time and again, like really, really being intentional. You don't have to sit there and look at every word before it comes out of your mouth. And I actually recommend not overanalyzing or filtering or censoring yourself, but rather when you are in alignment, you can speak freely from your heart and not actually have to worry about any any of the words. It's like really liberating. It's one of the most liberating spaces to be in when you can just speak and trust your heart. Very powerful. Um, so there is a plethora of health benefits to taking naps. You can improve your mood, your energy level. Sometimes it's just a little respite from the stimuli of the world, enough to give us a little space to reflect and make a better decision. These kind of brief moments of sleep, um, can give us the stamina that we need to actually, feel good in our bodies and be present to what's happening, versus thinking about how our bed, daydreaming about our bed, or wishing the moment were over, right? How many times are we pushing through, wishing that it was sometime later in the day, wishing our life away because we're tired or we don't like what we're doing. So I know well sleep deprivation. I know what that feels like when I was having to go to the hospital and sit with my mom in the ICU. You really don't sleep in an ICU. They're in there every 2 hours, and there's constant beeping, and there's lights, and it's freezing, and you take naps. And then if someone isn't well, which you're not going to be if you're in an ICU, and there's a fall risk, or there's a life and death kind of balance situation, then it's not conducive to sleeping. You might close your eyes and rest for a few moments, but then you're up, and then you're kind of on adrenaline, and then at the end of however long that period is, there's a crash. I experienced that crash when I finally, after everything was over, many, many, many weeks, I came home and found myself, I would have to brush my teeth and then go take a nap. Like, that was all that I had the energy for. And it was necessary. It was fourth quarter, if you ever played football, they hold up that four, like, all right, dig in, let's go. This is what we need. Blood, sweat, tears. You got to put it all out there. And there are situations that call for that from you, that call for your reserves and to be completely depleted, and to just leave it all out there. And sometimes we need to do that for each other, And so, we're not going to say don't do that ever, but I wouldn't recommend making it your lifestyle, right? There are times when we need to do that, and we can decide when those times are and what's worth, risking our own health for. What's worth it to us to do that. So for a really, really long time, before present day, many, many millennia ago, and even, as recent as 100 years ago, naps were revered in many more parts of the world. And then, like I said, the invention, the modernization of things, gives us conveniences that actually we have to decide whether convenience should take the place of common sense sometimes, right? And sometimes because we get caught up in the rhythm of society, or the rhythm of what we've been conditioned to do, we actually forget that the agenda of the job, or the agenda of that we are working from, maybe from our past, and not actually what's in our best interest right now. So just food for thought, right? No judging or blaming. It's just concepts, and we decide, what really works best for our lives, and what's a good fit, right? So best guidelines for naps. So between 20 and 30 minutes, if we're going to take a nap, a power nap, right? Because you go beyond 30, you're starting getting into deeper realms of sleep that can actually leave you feeling irritable and groggy when you get up, and that's obviously not the effect we're going for. And so there's also the possibility that skipping that middle ground and going for like a 90-minute nap could also be beneficial, because you actually get through a whole cycle of sleep, of the sleep cycles, and then you can wake refreshed again. So, less than 30, or 90, right? Is where the sweet spot seems to be research wise. And experientially for me, I find a 30-minute nap is actually pretty good. I don't go longer than that. I can actually slip into deeper sleep sooner than that. But if I shorten it to 15, it's not enough. So there's a sweet spot depending on my energy level. So you have to kind of test it for yourself. What I would recommend you do is set an alarm, because it's super easy to just slip into deep sleep and actually miss whatever you know needed to continue doing that day. Which, you know, you decide. Sometimes, when we've kind of been conditioned to kind of be on the grind, we can actually have feelings of guilt or self-resentment, when we're tired and not giving ourselves the rest, or we're giving ourselves the rest and we have beliefs, internal but core beliefs around, anytime we're resting, we're wasting time, or we're lazy, or, somehow we're not doing a good job. So, just be mindful, notice, be aware of thoughts that you might have or feelings that might arise, when you consider napping. Um, and sometimes it can, when you're going for these kind of shorter power naps, it can, if you're one that it takes some time to get into a restful state, you really going to want to play up your environment. You want to dim the lights, maybe get yourself some earplugs, maybe wear an eye mask, maybe set the temp so it's good, maybe get some soft pillows, snuggle up in the blanket, make the conditions around you really conducive for rest, so that you can actually get there sooner. Because if you take 20 minutes in order to get in that restful state, and then you get there at minute 20, and then you have to get up, then it didn't really do what you intended, right? And sometimes actually, just to that point, sometimes it's more about just giving yourself permission to rest. It isn't even about the physical act, but so much as it is the permission, the internal permission to take time away from the work, or take time away from the responsibility or obligation or request of others, right? And just really just be with yourself. And so, if your rest, if what rejuvenates you is, just sitting and looking at, pictures of animals, some dodo, I mean, it can have me in tears. Those dodo videos, or like a good America's Got Talent video with the confetti. And I mean, depending on the time of the month, I tell you what, I could be in tears, and, knowing that the confetti's coming, knowing that they're going to win. And you still have a good time by the end of the video, right? Who hasn't had that experience where you just, you let yourself get caught up in the emotion, just like we suspend our disbelief for movies. We let ourselves get caught up in the kind of whimsicalness, and the fun of the moment, and be entertained, as a way of kind of taking a break. And just remember that, you don't want to engage in anything that is going to cause you to have to think a lot, because what really more often than not, if your body does need rest, and that's real, what first, and that kind of leads me into kind of the second part of things. And we've been talking about productivity a little bit along the way tonight. But my last tip on naps is just to take it before 3, especially if you plan to go to bed, anytime in that kind of 10 to midnight area, which is recommended for hormonal health, right? You want to make sure you're in the bed sleeping, before midnight, preferably, closer to 10. Just because of that circadian rhythm. We want to stay in line with our natural rhythms, the rhythm of the earth. Our connection is real. Body of the earth, right? Bodies of the astrological kind of heavens, they're real. They have an effect. We have a relationship, right? So productivity, is a big deal, right? So when we are having the intention of being productive and we want to work in the best way, I'm going to touch on this maybe more. Maybe I'll do a part two. So we have other kinds of rhythms where if you've ever found yourself trying to accomplish a big task and you spend hours and hours and hours doing it, you find yourself actually, if you're reading a book, rereading the same paragraph 20 times for the last 15, 20 minutes. You're basically wasting time because you're not actually absorbing anything. You're actually not present with the material. If you're not present, it's difficult to actually make a memory that you can recall later. And so these rhythms that we have are actually, for our brain, there is a rest and activity cycle. Just like our focus, our brain, our neurological system needs to reset, right? And so just like when we're sleeping, we have certain cycles. We also have wake cycles in our wake lives. And so you want to pay attention to your own waves, right? Because everyone's a little bit different, but there's a window of time, 80 to like 110, 120 minutes, where we can be really productive. And then beyond that, we actually start to fall off and not retain information and have less focus. And so your ultradian, ultradian, ultradian rhythm. When I first learned about my ultradian rhythm, it was a game changer. I started working in 30-minute blocks or 90-minute blocks of time where I'll spend, 30 minutes on one, giving, keen focus to one particular topic or task, and then take a break, focus on something else for another 30. You have to figure out which kind of pattern works best for you. There are a couple of ways you can do it, but without frequent breaks, your quality of your work will suffer. And so you take little mini siestas, even if we don't take them, as a culture. You can take little mini siestas and not feel bad one iota. Right? Unplugging periodically really improves your productivity, and it can help your creativity as well. You may have even taken a break from an idea that you were pounding away at and then come back, giving yourself a little space, right? Space is really important. And then you came back with fresh ideas. You're able to look at what you were working with, problem solving or some kind of creative endeavor, and you were able to come back from a different perspective. It could have been even on the approach. You were able to see it from a different angle. But you are different, right? You leave the thing there in the same state and you come back finding it in the same state that you left it, but you are different. And isn't that how we are in our lives, right? Remember 10 years ago, you might have encountered a similar situation that you now respond to very differently. The situation hasn't changed. It still has the same stimuli is the same, but you have changed. And so your perspective is different and your relationship with it has changed because you have changed. So, a few practical ideas about how this ultradian rhythm can be used. Like when you're trying to be productive and maybe even just get through something that isn't your favorite thing to do, but needs to get done in order to get to the things that you really love, right? So there's something called the Pomodoro technique where you work in really short bursts, which I kind of described to you earlier, which is like a 25-minute intensive focus, and then you rest for 5 minutes, and then you do 3 to 4 cycles of that, and then you take a longer break for 30 minutes, and that can really be a powerful way to work. In groups, it can be a powerful way to work. When you have a lot of tasks to get done, or at least you want to move them forward. Because what I find is that anything you put on your to-do list is never one and done. It's never just, oh, I'm gonna do this, this, and this, and I just do that, and I can just do it. There's always a phone call or an email or a follow-up or something else there are more steps involved that usually make that thing have to happen over a span of time. And so this is really good for a to-do list as well. Another method could be to work in kind of a 52 to 17 minute method, where you work for 52 minutes and you take a break for 17. And when you're a really intense kind of person and you have ideas flowing, maybe this longer period of time feels better for you because you don't want to break the momentum. And I get that. But you still want to work with purpose and you also respect your natural rhythms. So that could work. And then also there's just the, movement. It's kind of inserting movement into your workflow could actually really heighten your productivity as well. So, maybe you go for a 20-minute walk. It increases your blood flow to the brain. Remember and so it helps the brain not feel so tired because you're reoxygenating your, and sometimes, like we said, creating that space, but also creating a little more aliveness in the body can bring us more into presence, which brings us more into creativity, right? So this is all, it all kind of works together. So we've discussed a lot of things tonight, so many things. I hope that that was helpful for you. You found some value, and if you have comments or questions, please put them in the chat. I will come back and check them. And until next time, beautiful folks of the ether, keep it juicy. Life was meant to be delicious. Take naps if it suits you. Take breaks because it definitely suits all of us. And I love you if no one's told you. Have a great night. Peace and love.